Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and apologies for several things, amongst one of them being the slight delay in the kickoff of this afternoon's meeting. We had some slight overruns in an earlier meeting, which has caused a carryover. We'll start off by asking if there's any apologies. I did have a note from Councillor McCone that he may not make it, so just checking that he's not online. Okay, so we'll register that as an apology. Do we have any further apologies? Nope. And we'll move on now and ask if there are any declarations of interest. Oh, sorry. Apologies. Can I have someone move that we accept the apology of Councillor McCone, Councillor Ryan, someone seconding, Deputy Mayor Halale? All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. We'll move on now to declarations of interest, and I'll ask if there are any. If not, we can move on to agenda item 3, which is confirmation of the previous minutes. Before I go around and ask for others' input into the minutes of the last round, I'd just like to state at the outset that it is my recommendation that we don't accept them in their current form. I've read them again last night, and there are several statements in there that I would like to address and then recirculate for approval at the next meeting or via agreed resolution. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll happily support that. I had some trepidation knowing that we were under tight time frames today, but I had a number of requests to amend the minutes on pages 9, 10, 11 and 12 of the agenda, all related to the 17th of December meeting. I'll happily show those to you. I would have shown them to you earlier had you not advised me of your intention not to receive them today. But I think it would be effective. It would get a better outcome and save a lot of time if we just left them lie on the table.
Yeah, thank you. I could go through some of them, but again, in the interest of time, I think it's probably better to rework them. So could I ask for somebody to move that we don't accept the minutes? Councillor Hopkins, seconded. Councillor Ryan. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Again, that's carried. We'll move on now to agenda item 4.
Chair, I think we probably should move a second motion that they be reconsidered at the next meeting.
Certainly, I'm happy to support that. Can I have a second? It'll naturally happen according to our governance officer. How effective is that? Excellent. Thank you. We'll move on now to agenda item 4. And that being the... Oh, sorry, where am I? The other thing was that the minutes were replicated twice in there. So pages 13 to 18 are exactly the same as pages 7 to 12, which is why I'm fluffing around a little bit. All right, agenda item 4, memorandum reports, and we'll move firstly into agenda item 4.1, financial report for quarter 2 FY 2025, and I'll invite Mr. Hope and Ms. Nichols to talk to this.
So Mr. Nichols talked to most of this. I really just wanted to emphasise one point. We'll get into it, and it's really just highlighting the comments in relation to Project Reclaim. You know, it is a rather unusual project. You know, it's a very significant amount of expenditure, but it is throwing through the operating statement rather than appearing as a capital project as you would sort of expect for something of this size and nature. But as it's not creating a new asset, it needs to be recognised as operational expenditure. As we know, I discussed this item with Mr. Cook, who will be providing sort of a good roundup report of the whole project, including financials at a later date, because yeah, it was been a significant undertaking. I think the project itself was highly successful in terms of addressing the issues that it was supposed to address. There were just there's obviously some consequences of that project, particularly the increased scale of it that we're dealing with, and particularly in relation to Beach Road. But I just thought I'd emphasise that point. Particularly, it has quite an impact on the operating position that we are reporting. But otherwise, over to you, Amanda.
Just to conclude on that point as well, I wanted to emphasise, although it's over budget in this 25 financial year, there was some unused budget from the prior year that we didn't carry forward because it was an operating project, not CapEx, as Paul's highlighted. So the actual total budget that was approved was 18.5 across all years. But it has only incurred 15 million to date. So although it's over budget this year, it was under budget last year. So it swings around.
And that 15 currently assumes that we don't get the waste levy exemption or the ETS obligation exemption, which we're confident will come through as well, right? And that's around about $5.5 million as well, which will come off that total. It won't come off the current 15?
It won't come off. That was not factored into the budget. So the extra 5 million levies we didn't expect, we haven't accounted for whatsoever.
And
The true cost of the project was 15 mil against the true cost of 18.5. Levies weren't considered. Levies are sitting over on the table and not expected to be incurred.
yes, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Blackler.
Sorry, just could you just clarify that, Amanda? My understanding was that from previous conversations was that it was in the budget. So
we might have to come back to specifically clarify that one, but from what I'm told, the 18.5 mil did not include the levies. Do you know, Roger? I don't think we knew about that at the time, did we?
Current spend of 18.5 mil includes 5.5 million in levies, which we will very confident that we will get back. So 18.5 mil, that's 5.5 mil, that's 13, not being an accountant. And the original budget, the project reclaim, was 18.5 mil, spread over the total period of time.
Okay.
So sorry, can I just, so when we say we've incurred 15 today, that is exclusive of the 5.5 levies that we should allow for, but would anticipate we don't need to spend.
I don't have the breakdown of the 15.5 mil in front of me, sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of confusion here because I've also been part of conversations where it has been included or not included. And so we look forward to the final report coming through when it does do so. And really, this is a good example of the kind of things that we'll expect to see, and they're broken down. But we are confidently saying that we expect that Project Reclaim will come in at under the original budget. That's a yes.
Under or on?
Under or on. Thank you. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, my recollection was similar to Councillor Blackler's, and yeah, it has been confusing to be told different amounts along the way. That's, you know, I'm not saying, you know, not inconsistent, but it's just understanding the context of what we're being told each time. I have spent considerable amount of time trying to find the original resolutions of what we did decide around Project Reclaim, but I hadn't had any success with that. And maybe it'd be very helpful for us to have have the links back to whatever reports and whatever resolutions we actually made, because it would just help show the background to that.
Councillor Blackler.
Just a further question about Project Reclaim, if that's okay. I just wondered, and it's the interlink between Project Reclaim and the works that are being undertaken on Aomara Road. And I just wondered how the procurement guidelines that we adopted at the last meeting were used to inform our approach to achieving the best outcome, you know, when we view the two projects together, i.e. could the sub-base material being uplifted from Aomara Road and subsequently being taken out to Pukuri have been better placed, you know, down the hill into one of the excavation sites that could potentially, based on public consultation, need to be refilled with material.
Is that a question anybody at the performance audit and risk committees in a position to be able to answer, or is that something that we should look at when we have a post-project evaluation and review?
Well, I guess it's directly associated with the guidelines that we adopted, which would hopefully address some of these kind of issues. So I'm happy to take it up down another line of questioning, but if that's your recommendation.
It was more a question, Councillor Blackler.
Just sort of recruiting, highlighting this issue, but no, I mean, it's a complicated issue, and that's why did highlight that we do need to have a wrap-up report at the end of it that considers all of these issues rather than, and so I think that would be, thanks for highlighting that issue, and we'll make sure that's addressed in the wrap-up report.
Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, look, I've got a couple of questions. One of them relating to personnel costs and the quantum identified on page 20 of our agenda, and the other on that page relating to the reduced quantum of government grants and subsidies. But I want to come back. My first question really is to a matter that I have raised repeatedly, because it is raised repeatedly by officers. In fact, it's raised with every report, in every report the Power Committee gets. And that is that depreciation is costing more. And on page 19 of this one, we see depreciation and the cost of project reclaim are all running over, or personnel cost, depreciation and the cost of project reclaim. I believe, and my question to Paul and to Amanda, I do not believe that the depreciation formula that Parliament imposed on local government at the end of the 20th century is any longer fit for purpose. We cannot afford to keep on doing, in my view, what we are doing. And the reason we can't afford to keep on doing it is because Parliament has, in the interim between then and now, radically increased the standards required to be delivered on a range of services and impose those radical increases in standards in a very short time frame, which has escalated the cost of depreciation beyond, in my view, the capacity, particularly of smaller councils, to fund it. And I've been racking my brains to think about a way, and I'm coming to the view that we need a new formula, like maybe 50% depreciation paying forward and 50% loan funding paying back. But I'll be guided in the end by Amanda and Paul and Simon. But I think we've got to sit down and do some really deep strategic thinking about the future of depreciation and how we actually build it into our budgets. Would you?
Right, so I'm gonna hop in there, because this is not the first time that you've mentioned depreciation, and I appreciate that. But I'm going to ask, and I absolutely accept you and understand your frustrations, but I'm going to ask that question in a slightly different way. Is this the same as Councillor Hopkins' issue with audit, in the sense that the depreciation formulas that we use are unable to be challenged at an individual? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. To you, Amanda.
So obviously the financial strategies had a significant rewrite in the long-term plan. And in the last financial strategy, there was a schedule that we put through and had a lot of specific assets that were had unfunded depreciation. So part of finalising this long-term plan over the next couple of months, that schedule is going to be coming to council for consideration to decide specifically what assets, types of assets we will choose to unfund. There's also the question of, because a lot of our assets are loan funded now, so we don't want ratepayers to be servicing the loan as well as depreciation. So a rule of thumb in that schedule previously was that over the first 20 years, while an asset is loan funded, like the term of the loan, it is, we don't fund depreciation as well. So these are all things that council needs to consider in finalising the long-term plan, and that'll be a key strategy in making our budget balance as well.
Yeah. So in short, one of the key outcomes from the finalised financial strategy with regard to depreciation is that we hope that the impact of it will be lessened.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think, with regard to loan funded projects, we defer depreciation kicking in for 2 years, but if it's up to 20, then that's a major step forward, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. You also raised a couple of other points.
Yes, I did.
With regard to that, so if I can just pick up on those, like you, I guess, I'm disappointed that 6 months into the year, we are yet again forecasting that we're going to come in significantly under what our budget end of year result was going to be. So we're looking at being $18 million difference between what was forecast and where we'll actually land. And secondly, I too express concern in a year when we are looking at less staff on board, that our personnel costs are already $700,000 over budget and forecast to be $1.4 million over budget by the end of the year. And I may invite Mr. Hope or maybe Mr. Parmalee to talk to the latter.
I suppose the overall position, I think we've covered off the major items that are driving that. And I suppose it goes back to Councillor Hopkins' point about depreciation. It's one thing recognising sort of the accounting expense, and we can't do anything about that. That is just driven by the revaluation process and the rates that apply and the value of the assets. We do have control about how much of that is funded. So it's recognised it's a deficit. Is I suppose the challenge to the finance team and myself and Amanda and all sitting at the back there, who we'll introduce later on, is how do we make a better estimate of the likely movement in the value of the assets and then the depreciation that needs to be then recognised in the budgets. At the moment, we base it off the bill results, and in particular in relation to the revaluations, it's just not keeping pace. You know, we were all surprised about the very significant increase in the value of the water assets that we saw in a 3-year period. Yeah, and it's a matter that's probably the biggest driver of the change. Talked about Project Reclaim, and that's a bit of a timing issue, and it's because of its funding. The personnel costs, so I'd probably not rather go into a different venue, but a lot of it is to do with what we have had. It was not unexpected. We did have a number of people leave the organisation after the new structure was announced, and that really does basically crystallise a lot of final costs, particularly in relation to things like holiday pay, where it's all paid out. So it's created a bit of a timing difference with the remuneration, where something that was semi-intangible has actually been realised, and so it has, most of that occurred, certainly all of it pretty much occurred in the first 6 months of the year, so it has had an impact on the what we've recognised compared to the budget we were expecting at that time.
Okay, we are still forecasting another $700,000 of overspend for the second half of the financial year, which I don't get. But if that's the core rationale behind what's driving that, then it would be my expectation when we see the first cut of the forecast personnel costs for FY 25-26 that they would be less than $18 million.
So we would be expecting that as well, because the staff numbers are coming down, as we said before, through transformation. We're doing a 9% reduction in our staff FTE equivalent, full-time equivalent. I would say that we've got other costs going up associated with staff though. So it's not going to be a 9% reduction in our personnel costs. And I'd also add to that the 9% FTE reduction isn't all going to come in straight away. So we're trying to transition to that. So a lot of that will come in pretty much straight away, but some of it will be delayed in terms of that saving. But I would expect that we'll be looking at a reduced personnel cost as well.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins, the other question you had, I believe, was with regard to the grants and subsidies.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Nice to hear that essentially what you've said about the personnel costs is it was an upward spike with a downward trend. But I was just curious, I can understand why development and RMA contributions are down. That's the contraction and the recession. We're doing well in the other grants and donations. I'm just curious to know why government grants and subsidies are down. I would have thought that those are the sorts of things that should be paid as and when, and they essentially should always be pretty close to budget.
The biggest variable in there is the funding in relation to the gallery development. We thought it would be slightly further ahead, and we would have received the first lump sum payment. We sort of had a bit of the same issue with the event centre, but now that construction has started, so we got the first contribution from Targa Community Trust, which was really welcome. So it's like very different from NZTA, where it is directly related to the spend that we have during the year. These very lumpy sort of capital contributions, there's usually a number of barriers that we have to get across until we actually receive them.
But
I just have two other questions very quickly, if I may. On page 21, there's a reference there to revaluation reserves, which are actually showing us down. And I'm just curious to know why that is, because the budget had them at 919,470. But the actual is 915,269. And these loans to other entities, what are the increases there that have taken that amount up from 1823 to 26?
can I just ask before we go on to those questions, because you've now moved on to the balance sheet, were there any more questions around the P&L? Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to close off the discussion on the P&L page before we moved on to the balance sheet page. So if there's no more questions on P&L, we'll move on to balance sheet now. And Mr. Hope or Ms. Nichols. A question off the line. Our esteemed Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to ask an obtuse question but I have been waiting for some time and you had moved on, but we talked about Project Reclaim and I heard 13 and 18 million bandied about. When I have a look at the table showing where we utilised LGA funding for purposes, that table shows us borrowing 35 million under Project Reclaim.
Yeah, now, so thank you for raising that. And I was going to address that when we got to that section of the report. Councillor McCombs also sent me through the same question. We can leap to it now if you want to. Otherwise, I can deal with it when we get to that page. But
No, I'm happy to take your direction on it.
Yeah, so I will address that when we get to it, but it's not $34 million at all. It's just the way that the definition of those loans is expressed in those lines.
Thank you.
Apologies. So back to Councillor Hopkins' questions with regard to reserve revaluations and loans to other entities.
So the revaluation reserves, obviously touched on before, at 30 June 2024, we had a significant revaluation, much larger than we expected. So we've just revised what we thought the revaluation movement would be at 30 June this year, and we've just brought it down slightly because we had that huge one last year. And just bearing in mind what the market and costs are doing at the moment, we thought it was a bit lower. So that's our best guess at this point in time. In terms of loans to other entities, there's actually a current portion and a non-current portion. So if you add the two lines together, they're about there or thereabouts. We have, since last year, we lent a third loan to Wayland Lodge, 100K has been drawn down in October, but that's the only movement since 30 June 24.
Okay. And on your balance sheet, the property, plant and equipment differentials primarily related to the timing of the revaluations on that as well, and we expect that to come in close to by year end. Are there any other questions on the balance sheet as presented? No, if not, we'll move on to the recommendation. So sorry, Ms. Nichols.
I didn't get a chance to, to speak to the report at the start, but just one last point. I think we've talked about all the variances in detail, but just to highlight with the carry forwards. So in the council meeting on the 17th of December, it was agreed to defer 20 million of capital projects from the 2025 annual plan. So behind the scenes officers have factored that into the 26 year and beyond in the 9-year budgets, and they will be discussed once we've finished consultation on the consultation document and had hearings and everything. We can see the full picture then and decide where those projects will fit in over the next 9 years.
Thank you, and apologies for not giving me the chance to talk to the paper. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. When you say they've been built into the budget rolling forward, is that shuffling timing and consideration of resourcing and such like? So in effect, you know, in a roundabout way, it won't be precise, but approximately 20 mil of later works have been kind of all pushed along the chain. We
haven't moved anything to make room for this 20 mil. So we've put it on top of the existing LTP budgets. So we've just added it in where officers best think that it will be necessary. There's some, I don't know if you recall the report from the 17th of December, but there was some that are cancelled altogether, or the values changed or the timings changed. So we've just put placeholders in where we think is the best spot to do them, and then it'll be council's decision whether they keep them in those years we've put them in, whether they remove some other options to put them in, or however they want it to fall.
So in previous sessions where we've set the budget, we've, you know, asked for consideration around our ability to actually carry out the work. So, and you know, and there has been incremental improvements in that. So will we see an even closer kind of alignment with reality of what can be achieved on this next iteration?
Yep, that's our intention. We'll put everything that we need to do will be put on the table, everything that's coming out of consultation. So there'll be a lot of new proposals that will pop up. Public will come and speak to you during the hearings. So that'll all be part of the decision you need to make. Yeah, so council can put forward, I'll put forward the finances, the capacity that we've got to borrow. Officers can talk about their capacity to deliver those projects, and then it's your prerogative what ones you want to do. But we will, as we've done in previous years, we will put them in, prioritize them in various ways, and you can decide what is achievable each year.
Okay, on that basis, and if there's no more questions, could I please ask somebody move that we accept the financial report for QF2? Seconded, moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Blackler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move on to agenda item 4.2, which is the Treasury report. And Amanda, I'll invite you to speak to it this time.
Thanks. I just wanted to introduce the new accounting manager while we're here as well. He's obviously does a lot behind the scenes contributing to these reports, and will be helping me out a lot going forward. So this is Paul Edmonston, and occasionally he'll be speaking on them as well. So in terms of the Treasury report for the first 6 months of the year, we are overall in a pretty stable position. Same story as previously. Not too much movement in our loans to other entities and other cash holdings, and the debt balance has stayed pretty consistent as well. In terms of looking ahead, the council made the call this morning to repay the Observatory Village funds that we received on the 3rd of February. So that'll be put towards debt. So that will reduce the loans and advances to other entities by the 15.6, and then we'll take it off the debt balance as well. And yeah, so we expect that we will close the year with $16 million less of the 99 million that we predicted at 30 June. And then also it will come down significantly with that 20 mil of capex that's been deferred as well. So we're hoping to end at around the 70 mil mark. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. I'll open the floor up for questions or comments. Councillor Hopkins.
Look, a couple of very quickly, if on page 24, this is just me not understanding something, so if you could explain it, I'd be grateful. Underneath the interest on bank deposits, there's a paragraph. The last sentence reads, there has been less use of term deposits during the year to date than was envisaged. The focus instead being on restraining borrowings from the LGFA. Now, those two things don't seem to be related in any way. I mean, term deposits is putting money in an account to earn a bit more interest than you would if it was on call, whereas, and I don't quite see how that relates to a focus on restrained borrowing.
So one of the things I've been really firm on over the past 12 to 18 months is that we run our cash much more tightly than we have in the past. In the past, we tended to put money onto term deposit and then find that we needed to draw down money to be able to pay unforeseen cash flow forecasts. So what Amanda and Paul are doing is they are running a much more tightly oiled machine, which means they've got much less to deposit, which means we don't earn the interest. Yeah, but no, that's a great question. Thank you. I think I've answered that okay, Amanda?
I just didn't understand the sentence, and you've explained it stunningly well.
Stunning is a very
On
generous.
page 26, I just want to be clear, looking at that graph at the bottom, where we've got 2024 actual, 25 actual, and 25, so 25 budget and 25 actual. If the 25 actual relates only to up to the end of Q2, it makes a lot of sense because each of those numbers on the left-hand column is about half of what the other ones are. But am I right in assuming that that 2025 actual is not a full year, but it's a half year?
Other questions from the floor?
Oh, just Councillor McCone's question.
Yeah, so Councillor McCone's question, which I wanted to address, if we, and also Councillor Thompson's, if we go to page 28, you'll see in the table in the midsection there that looks at what the LGFA funding has been utilised for. If you look at the bottom 4 rows in there, November 23 through November 24, you'll see it has capital expenditure, comma, project reclaim brought forward, 10 million. And Councillor McCone's question was, if you add up 10 million, 11 million, 5 million, and 9 million, you get to 34 million, and they've all got project reclaim beside their name, but we're all saying project reclaim somewhere between 18, but certainly a lot less than that and around about. The answer to that is this is not saying that the project reclaim LGFA borrowings were $34 million. It's saying that for those 4 tranches of debt, they were utilised for both capital expenditure and for project reclaim. And the monies borrowed for project reclaim are not in excess of the $18 million that was spoken to. So I hope that answers the question. It's just the case of a comma in there. Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out there's a narrative below that table that's been added for the first time as well. Of the 86 million total borrowings, it's broken down by department. So yeah, just to clarify, there's about 7 million balance against project reclaim right now.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, one very small request to pass it on to Bancorp with their report that they provide with us. On page 32 of the agenda, you've got a graph at the top, liquidity and funding. There's a brown bit, a brown bar, a dark grey, blue, light grey, but it doesn't tell us what any of those colours represent. And you might just ask them to actually explain that next time they do it. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. Just on page 25, the table under item number 3, summarising the loans and advances to other entities. Can we just verify that the actual balance on the Civic Trust loan is accurate? Just because my understanding, because the balance seems to remain unchanged from 30th to 6th. 24 to the 31st, the 12th, 24, and my understanding was a principal repayment was made.
I will have to check that behind the scenes. Sorry, I don't have all of that information to hand, but my understanding is that that would be the actual balance. There hasn't been any principal repayments.
But we are forecasting a principal repayment somewhere between now and year end, then if it's dropping to 403.
That would be the regular expected payments. So would it not, Amanda? The ones that are budgeted there, like the monthly P&I.
I'll have to
Factor in.
check. So there's nothing in the narrative about principal. Yeah, because there's actually a few different loans behind the scenes for this one, so I have to check the details of them. I can't.
But this is a consolidated line of
All loans.
all loans. Yeah.
Mr. Hope, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it just, it's been, the change has been picked up in the table, but it just hasn't been flowed through to the narrative. I think it just, the way it's been prepared, it's one of those items that's not well checked. It probably just hasn't been checked against the table, whereas all the other numbers have. Because, yeah, we're showing up on the table on the same page, but the balance at year end was 403. So I think it's just, yeah, a bit of an anomaly that we haven't picked up in the narrative to match it up.
No, I was talking to the table. I'm querying if the actual balance at 31/12/24 shouldn't be 425k less. Sorry, 25k less, not 425k less.
Yeah, so I think it is, it looks incorrect to me too, Councillor Blacklip, but Amanda will check it and will respond. If we've got a forecast year end of 403, then there's got to be some principal in there somewhere along the way for it to be dropping. And it doesn't look like it's changed since year end 23, sorry. And you would have expected that if there had been regular P&I payments. So we'll check that and we'll make sure that we circulate back to the committee. Were there any further questions on the Treasury report as it's written? No. If not, then can I please ask for somebody to move that we accept that? Moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Again, that is carried. I now propose that we move into the public excluded sector. So could I please ask for somebody to move that we do that? Moved by Mayor Kircher, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you again, that's carried. So I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us online today, and we'll just pause as we move into public excluded. Thank you very much.